All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode 10 of From Sparks to Skyscrapers. It's been a while. The last episode we recorded was actually back in July. We did it in person before I came abroad. Now I'm finishing up my semester abroad here in Madrid. About 10 days left, and figured we'd get an episode in over Zoom. Obviously, we don't have our normal camera crew, so we're doing it over Zoom. But the man sitting across from me is the CEO and founder of Avertica, which is a consulting group. And he is also an international consultant for ETHEX, which is the Spanish organization, the governmental organization that helps businesses go abroad and expand their markets. Edgar Barroso is our guest today. He's one of my professors here in Madrid. Thank you for being here. So,
thank you, Joe.
Yeah, no worries. So just getting started here, you went to college abroad, correct? So when you decided to go to France, you said you went to France, and then American University in France, and then briefly in London.
Right.
And so what kind of factored into your decision to go abroad? You're born in Spain, so what made you want to expand your horizons?
There were two factors there that converged. But anyway, before I start, thank you for the time you are dedicating me for the interview. So answering your question, there were two factors there. On the one hand, my dad, back then, I was 18 years old, and he was working for IBM. He was the financial director of IBM Spain, and he was transferred to work in France. And as the financial director for IBM Northern Europe. So he moved over there. I was studying here, and I thought, it's a great opportunity to go to another country and study there. So I thought, and instead of studying at a French university or Spanish university, I thought, why he was working for an American company, so why not to study at an American university? So I went and I moved over there. I started my studies there, but we could transfer credits in between different universities as an abroad student. And for a while, I was also in London, but most of the time in Paris. And I wanted to learn, using the American system, which I thought it was way more practical than many European universities. That was the main reason. And the other main reason, besides that my dad had moved over there, it was that I wanted to have an international life. I thought always, Spain is not going to move from there, hopefully from the map. I am always going to be able to go, to come back to Spain. So I thought, well, what the heck, just let's just enjoy these years of my life abroad. And that's what I did. So those two main.
Yeah. And so, right out of college, you immediately, you mentioned you started franchising Telepizza, which is a big Spanish pizza brand here, kind of like a fast food type pizza brand, like a Domino's or a Papa John's for the people back in the States listening to this. So you did that, but you also, I couldn't even mention in the introduction all the things that you've done. You worked at the American Hotel Register. So that was another a job that you did when you were abroad in the States. You're an entrepreneurship professor here in Spain now. So you've had a multitude of different roles throughout your career. Starting off with that Telepizza franchising that you talked about. Coming right out of college, what was your concept of what you were going to do with your life, and what made you decide to get into that business?
Great question, because when I finished college, I graduated with a double major in international business and marketing. So I thought, I got a job offer at a bank there in Paris, and I started working at the bank in the international department, with the Forex market, foreign exchange, and, international letters of credit, and analyzing the financial statements of companies to see if we were going to grant them credits and loans and things like that. And after a year, it was kind of like, God, this is fantastic, but it's not my thing. I cannot be crunching numbers all day long. I had a different spirit. I had, a way more active personality. Nothing wrong with the financial people, which I love them. But in my case, I needed more action.
You had that itch. You had that entrepreneurial itch.
Exactly. And so what I ended up doing is I was working, and all of a sudden, two friends from college that also were from Spain, but they had studied with me in London and Paris, came to me and said, Edgar, will you, quit your job and come back to Spain and start a franchise with us? It's in the pizza business and fast food, and we have to put things into context. Back then in Spain, there was not much fast food, and even less fast food chains and franchises in that field. There were only a few, McDonald's, Burger King, but really they were starting. So I thought, well, what the heck? Now that, the money I had saved to put later on into my master's degree and to go back to business school, I thought, well, I'm very young. Back, I was 23 years old, and I thought, well, let's just try. So I moved to the south of Spain, to Benidorm, and we started with this telepizza thing, which it was like, similar to Domino's Pizza, but they were also starting. They only had 90 units open, and this was the first one in a coastal area, which was an experiment with a population that moves up and down depending on seasonality. So to make a long story short, the fact was that we took off. Initially, it was a nightmare because we couldn't handle people were not used to that type of food, etc. Yeah. But little by little took off, and it was great. It was serendipity, being at the right time, right place, and the business took off. And then we opened another one, and that was for 2 years. I was doing that. But there was another opportunity for me to go to to move to the US. So I quit as a manager there, but I there my investment. So the company grew up to 25 franchises we own along the coast of Spain. So to me, that was a great thing because, first of all, I already had an investment that was, growing.
Successful,
and successful. I learned the concept of recurring passive income. Recurring passive income, I think, it has been my motto since that time. And then, I got a job opportunity in the US at American Hotel Register, company you mentioned before at AHR.
Yeah, and well, before you get into that, I just want to add. I want to gear the question a little bit with this because the AHR is essentially a company that supplies hotels with things that they need. So it's a massive company. All the hotels that you know and love around the world really are supplied towels, anything you can think of that goes into a hotel, sheets, towels, that's American Hotel Register. And so it's a massive company, but it was a position within that company. So it wasn't entrepreneurial in nature, but I want to know, what did you learn about interpersonal relationships, and what did you learn that you can apply to your entrepreneurship from working there?
From working at AHR, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was an opportunity that came up, and I thought in the international department, as you said, and you said it all right. It's a company that was very interesting company. I incorporated in 1885, so
old.
I think it's older than Coca-Cola. That company, owned by a family, the Leahy family. And that was very interesting, and I started working for them. It's true that my mind was in the world of entrepreneurship, but I wanted to also enjoy the corporate world, and I wanted to also. I think it's a good thing. It's like when you're in the world of sports or in the military. As you climb up the corporate ladder, or you climb up within the ranks, you learn a lot. You also have to learn to take orders. And that's a very important thing, I think, also in entrepreneurship, because if you have been at a large corporation and you also have been part of a department and a part of a team, when you are taking orders, regardless if you like them or not, and you have to, you learn the art of negotiation, and you learn a lot of things out of the corporate world. Some things are better, some things are worse, but you learn a lot, which is something later on you can use as an entrepreneur. And when you're going to have employees, I think it's a fantastic thing. So out of my experience at American Hotel Register, it was also a great company and a great place to work for. I was with them for over 10 years. And I was in the international business department. So as you said, it's a company that back in the day, it was a printing company, but it was just a supplier. Works with the many large companies in the US, from Procter and Gamble to Kimberly Clark, Carrier, and many others. We could go on and on with thousands of suppliers. So they can equip hotels from top to bottom with the FFI, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. But then also they take care of the resupplies of the hotel as the hotel keeps going. So I learned a lot.
Yeah, what did you learn in terms of cultural differences between? So I know you were abroad during school, so you had experience within Europe, but going to the States, had you been to the States before this, or was this your first time when you headed over there?
Yeah, before, but just visiting. My girlfriend from Colorado, just took me there a few times, and I fell in love with the U.S. I always wanted to go, but I fell in love with the U.S. Everything pretty much. I love the country. Yeah. So culturally, you were asking me if there was a major, cultural shock and what I learned. I went there with my eyes and ears open because I wanted to learn as much as possible from the culture, everything. I was in love with the country, so I wanted to just learn. And about the world of business, corporate world, entrepreneurship, I think was the mecca of the corporate world and entrepreneurship and franchise development. So I always had the idea of one day maybe moving back to Europe with franchises from the US, something like that. So the corporate world at American Hotel Register was great because I was lucky enough to deal with a family, the Leahy family, that were very entrepreneurial themselves and very open-minded. So was there a cultural shock? Not really, because I was in an international department surrounded by people from 25 different nationalities because we were expanding worldwide. That's why I was there, to help them with the international expansion. And everyone really within the company were very welcoming, and I learned a lot because not only I learned the American way of doing business, corporate world, but also they open up. You know how it works in the States. If things go well in a company, they will give you more business. If they don't like you perform up par, you're out. I mean, it's a matter.
There's someone else. Yeah, there's someone else to take the place.
Absolutely. So I learned that, which was a great thing. And then also because I was in the international division, I ended up opening subsidiaries for them in Mexico, Canada. So I was helping them to just take the American business outside the US, which was a fantastic thing. But at the same time, I was learning from all those other countries where I was doing business. So it was, increasing and improving my knowledge in terms of international business, but always kind of like the American way,
Yeah.
So that was fantastic.
Yeah. So you, you said you spent about a decade at American Hotel Register. Between that and starting your current company, Avertica, which we'll talk about, but did you have any other business ventures in between that time period? And I was looking at your LinkedIn, it looked like there might have been a few short-lived businesses in there, and I want to kind of hear if those succeeded or why they ended, and because failure is a big part of entrepreneurship. So I want to kind of hear about that.
Okay, I keep it short there in LinkedIn because otherwise it will be a novel. But what happened there while I was in the US, I was looking for franchises. I got my master's degree there, and at the business school, Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. And then what I learned there was about entrepreneurship and new venture creation. So I specialize in that. I specialize in franchise development. I wanted to continue with franchises. So while getting my master's, I was kind of like developing a business plan for a franchise I will later on will create and develop in Spain, which was called the Clean House. And the Clean House is similar to Molly Mays, the Clean Authority, the Maids. There was back in the day a company called Service Brands in the US. It's still there, that owns these franchises together with 1-800 Dry Clean, Mr. Handyman, True Chemlon, and other companies. So I thought, wow, I want to create something like that in Spain, because what a great thing you provide all the services household services and home services, but under different brands, and you can create different franchise systems. So that's what I did. Well, I developed a whole business plan for the Clean House, which was my own brand, and I created the brand and the company from scratch. And I was developing the business from the States, the American way, but it was gonna be for Spain and for Europe. And that's what I did. There was a time when I thought, because I had or by then my 3 kids were born, and I wanted them to, they were half American, half Spaniards, so I wanted them to live for a while here. So I thought, well, let's just pack up and move to back to Europe, to Spain. And then we all moved. My wife, who was working at United Airlines, and my 3 kids, which were babies, 5, 4, and 4 years old, and then we all moved back to Spain, and I started the Clean House. So that was another experience, because it was a lot of responsibility. Now I was like, everybody had quitted their jobs, and we had the need to make that work.
Yeah.
I was plan A had to work, or plan B had to work. It just no other option, but it had to function, so I could feed my family.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It was fun. The process, it tells you and shows you how putting together a business plan makes sense, because and testing things and creating a pilot project first and your prototype first. So later on you can develop that and start with some possibilities of success. Otherwise, if you don't create that model, that prototype first. So I opened the Clean House unit, and then once I had figured out all the numbers, all the ratios, all the operational ratios, and everything under control with that top-notch brand image, then I started franchising. So to talk about failure and success, you were asking me. Well, it was a success. There was a point then when the crisis hit at the end of 2008, 2009. It all started with Lehman Brothers. We all know those stories. Yep. It affected the market here in Spain. Not only the real estate market, but also the entire economy. It was like a tsunami going through Europe. So at that time, the business started hurting, and I thought, and that's a good point also, I had to get rid of the business before things started going bad. So I had opened 14 franchises, but I thought it was the time to selling off the business, and I sold it. Now talk about a problem. One of the problems in the company that bought it later on went with other business into bankruptcy, and then they defaulted paying me part of the money. So that is a problem.
Yeah, that's no fun.
No, the business was successful, but then with other situation, my failure in that case was not getting paid completely for what I had. That was a problem.
That is a problem. And so moving into Avertica, which is your current role, CEO, founder of, it's a consulting company, correct? So was that part of the motivation for starting a consulting company? Was the fact that the economy was kind of going down, and then businesses were going to have to start reopening, and they were going to need consultants, so you capitalized on that?
Correct. By the time I had started the Clean House, I have sold out everything with Telepizza, so I have some money there. That have helped me to develop the Clean House, but also gave me a little cushion also for me and my family. We also had bought a franchise from Australia called Cash Converters.
Okay.
It's going, and it's
I've heard of it. Yeah.
It's a business that buys secondhand products and sells them, and already fixed or whatever, jewelry, skin, clothes, many products and things. That was also a great thing. I sold it also my chunk out of that business. So it was enough of employees, and it was interesting, have hundreds of employees, but there was a point it was exhausting, all that. So I decided, just quit everything related to entrepreneurship in my own investments and with lots of employees, and I went into the world of consulting. So with that money, I created Avertica Consulting Group, which was much easier, because that's a different story. It allowed me to get to enjoy the world of consulting and help other companies. What I call Avertica specializes in franchise development, entrepreneurship, startups, and helping companies to go abroad, international business, either Spanish companies going abroad or foreign companies coming to Spain. So it was going to keep me busy, but in a fun way, and also will allow me to identify potential businesses to invest in later on. So that was the purpose of creating Avertica.
Yeah. Well. What was the process of getting that business started like? Just like to describe for people listening that are trying to start a business, maybe just kind of the process that you went through, and kind of some of the maybe roadblocks that you faced, that kind of thing.
Consulting was much easier than starting, for instance, the clean house. The clean house had battalions of employees. Mm-hmm. Then you also had to develop the system so you could franchise it. It was a very complex thing to do. First of all, creating a model, then prove that it's right, and then start franchising. And so it's like almost owning two different types of businesses. So when I went into the world of consulting, gosh, that was much easier. Why? First of all, I had piled up a lot of knowledge related to international business, opening subsidiaries, what the corporate world is like. So it helped me to help companies. And at the same time, I've learned everything related to entrepreneurship and new venture creation. So I think I had enough acumen or knowledge and background to start helping people to kind of like put things on all the cards on the table and said, listen, this is what you're confronting and this is what you're facing. And there is one thing. As a consultant, you cannot tell companies what to do. You are giving advice. Right. You're recommending people. Large companies or small companies, it's such a big responsibility to tell them what to do or what not to do, because you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know what's going to happen out there in the marketplace. You don't know if the economy is going to go down the drain. Yeah. So the wrong advice, but you help people to recognize opportunities, to identify those opportunities and problems as well. So it to me was very fun, and it is still fun because I'm still running it.
Yeah,
it keeps you into the world of business. You help others, but at the same time you keep learning and learning and learning.
Right.
The process was easy because as a consulting company, you just have to surround yourself with great people, all the consultants. I learned another thing. I didn't want more employees in my life. I have had hundreds of employees, and that's fantastic. But God, that takes a lot out of you, because you also have to become a psychologist, and you have to manage people. That's very complicated, extremely complicated, to deal with people and motivating people all day long. So in the world of consulting is a different story. I didn't have to have my own employees, because what I do is I run the show, but I subcontract consultants depending on the level of expertise I need. Yeah. So I go into the bookstore, the library, and picking the right book depending on what you need. And that's what I do. I work with consultants that are experts in a subject matter, and I act out as a project manager.
Yeah.
So once we get a project, I pick the right people. We get the job done. We get paid, and then we distribute the money and next project, or we can handle different projects at the same time. So that's a completely different approach than running the typical business with lots of employees and machines and equipment and I don't know, distribution centers. Yeah. But it's also a very fun, interesting business.
Yeah, well. And you're doing something similar with Ethics, right? So am I pronouncing that right? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
So it's basically Edgar has a role now where he essentially helps other foreign companies come to Spain and develop a market strategy, come to the market in Spain and expand their brand there. Is that accurate? So what do you think about that role is intriguing to you? Is it the same kind of thing where it's like you're kind of getting that outside view into a business where you're not telling them what to do, but you're kind of giving them suggestions that will help? And can that be tricky because they're trying to, it's a government organization. So are brands ever kind of expecting you to tell them what to do? And you're like, I can't necessarily do that.
What I do with them, it's the same consulting I do with Vertica, but for the government. Okay. Right. And certified. So I can help both ways. Foreign companies coming into Spain and Spanish companies going abroad. This is a little bit different because we're talking about international business, and that's very fun as well, because you have to be very cautious. You have to be very careful. Number one, I always tell my customers and my clients that want to go abroad or coming to Spain, said, how long did it take you to grow your business in your country where you know everything? You know the language, the culture, the financial system, you know everything. And it took you a long time, right? Because you know your culture and your country and everything. You don't have the crystal ball, and there are many factors and variables. So imagine what it is going to be like doing business in another country. It is very complicated. So we need to actually don't assume that you know everything. Of course, it depends if you are going to export products or services, or you are actually going to open subsidiaries in another country. It's a very different ball game, or you're going to, or a merger or an acquisition. I mean, things can get very complicated and here. But to keep things simple and answering your question, I think it is very important that, and part of the fun is making people understand that they have to change their way of thinking. There is one thing called the self-reference criteria or self-reference criterion, which is we all have a tendency to think according to what we have experienced in life and what we see, and we assume the world is like that according to our own reality. But when you go into other countries, you discover new realities, and what to you is obvious and is obvious in the other country is not obvious at all. And customers, clients, companies, the government, and administration, everything is so different sometimes that what you take for granted is not like that at all. It's just like that for you and maybe the people in your country, but not for the other people in the other country. So it requires such amount of flexibility, adaptability, and which is a great thing as well, because at a personal level, you learn to become a chameleon and adjust to other people, other companies. But it's very complicated to teach that to other companies and other people and executives and directors, because they don't see that. And you know how things go. It's like Confucius was saying, if you hear something, you will forget it. If you see something, you will remember it. But only when you experience something, you will understand it. But this is, again, one more time the case. And until you actually teach executives and directors and you prove it to them, that is when they realize. By the time they want to realize and accept it, sometimes it's too late. This is a major responsibility as well. Yeah. So it's fun, though.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I mean, there's so many different aspects to it, because you mentioned like the differences between someone's reality being totally different. I mean, coming here to Spain to study abroad, I noticed that, but I've also traveled around Europe to other places, and Spain is different. And there's many differences between Spain and America, but you go to some other countries and it's like Spain and America are like this. It's like so close because the other countries are so different. So it's kind of an opportunity almost for people to expand their horizons. And if they think they have an idea that won't work in one place, there's a chance that it'll probably work somewhere else. So, I mean, that's an interesting dichotomy there. Let's talk about Top Social Power. So you mentioned that is it a new branch of Avertica? Is it within Avertica, or is it a separate company? And can you just talk about that a little bit? It's a new venture of yours.
Okay, it's a new venture. Top Social Power comes from all my activities done with corporations and teaching, because I teach at different institutions, organizations. I've organized many times, and I still do all kind of courses for corporations and companies. So I train a lot of people as well, executives, directors. I do the same at the Madrid Chamber of Commerce. So I thought, well, it teach multiple areas of international marketing, international business. But something I've always really liked and enjoyed is everything related to leadership and soft skills. I think after teaching everything pretty much, because I've lived operations management, manufacturing, many things in different companies. And the thing is, in the end, I think it boils down to how good you are as a manager or as a leader. And I think in a world with high levels of digitalization and, getting degrees and then getting your master's degrees. It's all about knowledge and digitalizing and artificial intelligence and all the different things. But we're forgetting about the human side. So I thought, why don't we get deep and serious about everything related to the art and science of leadership? Because it's an art and it's a science. And why don't we help people to develop the best inside them? I wrote a book called There is Gold Inside You, which I was talking about exactly that, the goal we have inside us, and it's about our talents. But you are not going to be appreciated, respected, or people are not going to hire you or invest in you or your ideas or your project unless you can communicate all those ideas and unless you can sell yourself. So I thought, oh my God, we need to do something about this. We need to teach people everything related to leadership, communication skills, negotiation skills. I started working on developing a project. It's called the Art and Science of Negotiation, the Art and Science of Persuasion. So I said, let's put all these things together. Let's develop some kind of business where it teaches people everything about soft skills. And people that are starting in life, how to become a manager, how to interact with other people, how to become team leaders, managers. And as we go up, teaching people how to become leaders. So when I started putting all these things together, I said, who are we going to target? Only companies, executives, and directors, or just the regular people out there in the streets? John and Jane and out there in the streets. And why don't we do this in a way so we can, normal people can actually learn all these soft skills and become the best of themselves and try to get out what they have inside and the best of their social skills. Because I've realized in the end, part of the success of people depends on themselves, on how they are and how great they are selling their ideas and communicating to the world and convincing and persuading others. Because you might be so skillful and knowledgeable about something, but unless you can communicate it and convince people, nobody's going to follow you. The same for investors,
it's true.
And selling your idea. So he said, we're forgetting it's fantastic digitalization, and I'm big into that, and artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, but let's not forget about the human side of so let's teach people the best of communication and leadership and management skills in general terms. And once they are great at that, probably they're going to be great at many other things, because now is when they can, shine in life. And their jobs, their positions, their salary. People that are outgoing, extroverted, that know how to sell themselves and lead people, usually they do much better in life. Even people that, have almost no degrees, and we see that often in the States, people that didn't go through college, but they are great communicators. Tony Robbins and many other people like that are very, very successful. And other people that had awesome degrees and 10 masters, but they're there in a corner because they're great people.
Yeah, so, it's marketability. And so that kind of leads me into my final question here. And that is just a final note is, what advice would you give? And you might have just given it. It could just be what you just said. But what advice would you give young entrepreneurs that know they want to start a business? Maybe they have an idea, maybe they don't. What advice would you give, one single piece of advice to give to young entrepreneurs that are still figuring it out?
Okay.
It's a hard question.
Ideas are great, but 20% is the idea, 80% implementation. In order to implement the right way a business, you have to get experience first. So some corporate life is essential, or at least some massive experience in the field or area where they actually gonna develop their business. And there are three things really fast, and that's from Michael Gerber. There is going to be an entrepreneur, there's going to be a technician, and an administrator. The administrator is the one that runs the business, but you need to be a good administrator of the business. You also have to be the great technician. I don't know, whatever the business is about.
Yeah.
And also you have to be a good entrepreneur, the visionary person. So you need experience in that field to understand those three parts of the business. Otherwise, the odds for failure are larger than normal. So that
Fantastic.
is a piece of advice: get experience first.
Yeah, and corporate experience, it's definitely worthwhile. And a lot of entrepreneurs also don't realize that, especially right out of college, you're so young, you still have so much time, and you can do like you did 10 years in corporate America and then still do whatever you want. So on that note, thank you for joining us here on episode 10 of From Sparks to Skyscrapers. Edgar Barroso. We're going to put all of his links for his LinkedIn, his websites, companies, all in the description of this video. So thank you all for listening, watching, viewing, subscribing, all of it. Thank you, Edgar, once again, and we will see you next time on From Sparks to Skyscrapers.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to all the listeners for this opportunity to listen to me. Thank you again.
Yeah.